Well, here we are, John, in another wonderful outdoor setting. We've been by the river, we've been on your favourite Colton pastures. This has been a blessing to many of our viewers who might not have access to the countryside, beautiful countryside like this. But of course, it's also can also be quite provocative if you're banged up inside, perhaps in a city. And one pastor asks, isn't this just privileged escapism whilst others are doing the hard work on the front line, keeping people alive in the hospitals? How is God's peace and presence available to those who are doing the frontline work? How can I, as a faith leader, offer such peace?
Well, that's quite a question, isn't it? Anyone who has time to read what will shortly be my 10 published books will learn that I've had quite a life in which there's not much of human misery that I haven't tasted, loneliness and the dark side of things. I've travelled far and wide. Unfortunately, I've come back in my old age to live in a place like this where I may indeed bask in what is most familiar to me, which is the world of nature. But I assure you, I'm not ignorant of the problems of human nature. In fact, as I've said on a number of times, I used to be the most unhappy man in creation. And it's fairly recently that I've been able to leave that behind and now call myself one of the happiest. I've drunk very deeply of the cup of misery and loneliness and hopelessness and homelessness and pointlessness, etc. Perhaps that's why I'm now able to stand and talk as I do, with, I trust, the conviction that some people seem to find, with the authenticity. It's not something I've learned from books, but through the hard school of life. And I certainly have not always been able to speak about spirit with the same confidence that I can now. Like so many teachers, I delved pretty much into spiritual teaching, and as a young man, of course, like young men usually do, I thought I knew quite a lot and did go lecturing and talking quite a lot about it, which rather embarrasses me now when I think back. But that's what I tried to do as a younger man. The thing about growing older is that you're always learning more, so looking back you see what you said and wrote years ago, and it may not be entirely wrong, but it's not as complete as it's not as complete a vision as one tends to get as you grow older. It's less fulfilled. So, what can I say to this presumably younger man than I am who writes like this? Well, dear, you've just got to do the best you can, like I did at the time. You can't steal. You can quote from someone like me or from someone wiser, but you can't pretend that you know it, because you don't. You just got to say that so-and-so says or so-and-so thinks this. We can only speak from what is real for us at any period in our lives. And perhaps that might humble us to do rather less speaking and rather more listening. I think that's what happened to me. I certainly reached a stage in my life, in my early 40s, mid-40s, when I was really quite a teacher, really, then, of meditation and spiritual things, and I was exposed by a series of events that made me realize it wasn't exactly a fraud, but it wasn't as real as it could have been. And I had to be brought very, very low indeed. I had to really be completely broken over a period of a number of years of awful depression, hopelessness, to gradually begin to emerge, speaking not from what I'd read from books, but from what the hard knocks of life had taught me. You may notice I don't often quote from other teachers or books now. I keep coming back to this presence. How am I able to find it so easily? Well, my dears, 83 years of practice. If you don't find it easy, keep practicing. I can't hasten the process for you. You've just got to practice until you realize that all the things that take you away from this, all that is not present, all the absent mindedness of your life, has got to realize it for the fraud that it is, for the promise that never comes true, for the transitory, ephemeral appearance that it is. And gradually, by a long process of often very painful, heartbreaking elimination, you'll find what's left. And then you've got a rock to stand on. You can read about the rock in the good book. Jesus is the rock. You can say that as a very young man. And so it's true. But you won't really know it. You won't know it fully until everything else that has appearances of being something you can hold on to in life is swept away. And there's nothing else. So just keep living, my dears. Keep living, and life itself will show you what you need to do. Good luck. God bless you. Until another day.